Hi, it's Noam Pandita here, and in this video I'll demonstrate how to use the second edition of the animated glitch action for Photoshop. This action set will automatically turn your still images into an animated sequence with glitch effects. Then this sequence can be personalized with built-in tools and saved as GIF or video. And it can be used also to create full glitch artworks. Here are some examples in the background. Now let's see how to use the action set, starting with installation. Open Photoshop and the Actions panel from Window Actions, and here click the menu icon at the top right, select Load Actions, and select the file Animated Glitch 2 action from your hard disk. And this is how it appears in the Actions panel once it is installed. Next, let's open an image to work with. I'll be using this one. And before using the action, the only thing that requires some setup is the resolution and aspect ratio of the image. Go to Image, Image Size, and check these requirements. First of all, width and height. Here you should set the exact resolution you need the final output to be. The recommended resolution is from a minimum of 100 pixels up to 2500 pixels for each axis of the image. Make sure in the image size panel that the width and height parameters are in this range. The action was tested and works also with 4K images, but it's not recommended to work with such resolutions. The workflow slows down significantly and the action is calibrated to give the best results with 2K or lower resolution content. So if you're creating a video, it could be a 1080p resolution video, or if it's an animated banner, it could have any aspect ratio and resolution within the recommended range. Just to make an example, 600 and 200 pixels. As a first test, start with a small to medium resolution image. In the same panel, make sure also that the image is at 72 pixels per inch. The action works at any PPI setting, but during the playback it will use the parameters of the resolution to create some of the effects. So setting 300 pixels per inch will simply give a different result. 72 guarantees an outcome with the sharpest details at the end, but feel free to experiment after the first test. Next thing, let's take a look at the crop tool. You can use this tool to set the right aspect ratio and cropping of the image. Select it by pressing C on the keyboard. On the top option bar, click the clear button here to reset its values, and also activate the delete crop pixel option. And next, insert the desired values of width and height here. Now that the tool is locked on the right proportions, use its bounding box to move and scale it as preferred. Then press Enter to apply the changes and crop the image. Then open the image size panel and insert the right resolution parameters. The last detail about the setup of the image is that this action won't work well on images that have a big portion that is 100% white. For example, a small colored logo on a white background. All the effects based on colors and lights won't be visible on a completely white background. A light gray color will be enough to make these effects visible. Now we are ready to use the action set, but first make sure that there is only the layer of the image in your file and that it's selected. If you want, you can open the timeline before the playback from Window, Timeline. Next, open the Actions panel, select the Animated Glitch 2 action and click the play icon here. The playback time can vary depending on the level of detail and resolution of the image and the processing power of your computer. For a 1000 pixel image, it should be a couple of minutes. When the playback finishes, the message render completed will appear. Click Continue to close it. Here in the Layers panel, you can see the newly generated layers and groups. By opening the yellow group Digital Noise, you'll notice that all the layers inside have a color overlay layer style. And by default, each style is expanded. You can use the arrow on the right of each layer to open and close them one by one. Instead, to organize the whole layer tree quickly, hold Alt on your keyboard and close the main group Animated Glitch 2 by clicking its arrow icon here. Then release Alt, open the main group again and also Digital Noise. Notice that all the layers are now reorganized. The effect symbol on the left of each one of these layers indicates that they have a layer style. This method can be used to reorganize the layers also in the timeline of Photoshop. Next, go to the timeline and click the play button on the top left of the panel to watch the animation. The first playbacks will be slow because Photoshop needs to cache the frames of the animation before making a smooth playback. The animation is made of 100 frames at 25 frames per second, for a total of 4 seconds. Next, let's see some tips about the timeline of Photoshop. Click the menu icon at the top right of the timeline and disable auto-grouping of clips. This will prevent Photoshop from creating undesired video groups when moving the effects in the timeline. Then, in the same menu of the timeline, select Panel Options. Here, set the timeline units to frame number and select a thumbnail size that will make your editing phase comfortable. The next thing is that you can use the spacebar to play and stop the animation, and you can also drag the cursor of the timeline to manually decide which part of the animation to watch. Set the timeline of Photoshop in looping mode by clicking the gear icon on the top left of the panel and by activating Loop Playback. The resolution parameter visible in this menu refers to the resolution of the preview during the playback of the animation. Adjust the zoom level of the timeline from the slider on the bottom of the panel. Next, let's have a quick overview of the structure of layers generated by the action. All the effects inside the Animated Glitch 2 main group are organized in 5 subgroups and a base layer which is just a copy of the original image. All the effects are organized in these 4 bottom groups. Each one contains several layers and each layer is basically an animated effect. Post Effects instead has some layers useful for the final tweaks and color adjustments. Now open the main group Animated Glitch 2 also in the timeline. The organization of the group and layers, as you can see, is the same as in the Layers panel, but notice that when opening one of the subgroups, let's start with Base Effects, the layers inside are shown as clips. Most of the effects of Animated Glitch 2 are packed into clips that makes the customization of the file easy and organized. A clip could be very short because it contains a quick and flashy effect of just few frames, or be a long clip with an effect that covers the entire work area. A good thing to do now is to hide all the groups in the Layers panel and play the animation keeping only base effects visible. Then do the same also for the other groups. This way, you'll have a clear idea of how each category of effects is contributing to the final result. Now let's see how to use these layers and how to customize your file. It's possible to quickly create many variations starting from the original animation by following few simple methods. Most of the editing is done with just 2 panels, which are the timeline to decide the timing of the effects and the Layers panel to decide their appearance. So let's start with this list of methods that can be used to customize the file. Some of them are very basic. The first one is making a snapshot. Open the History panel from Window History, click its menu icon at the top left and select New Snapshot. Then click OK. The snapshot will save the current history state. If you make variations to the file and want to reset it to this state, you can do it by simply clicking the snapshot in the History panel. The next thing is simply hiding the effects. After the playback of the action, all the effects are visible by default. and often it's not necessary to use them all in order to create a nice animation. You can hide effects in the Layers panel by clicking the eye icon of each layer. The next editing method is moving the effects horizontally in the timeline. Each effect can be moved in the timeline by just dragging the clip. This way, it's possible to totally change the order in which the effects are appearing and how they combine with each other. When doing this step, take into account that in the two bottom groups, base effects and glitches, the layers by default are not transparent and are in normal blending mode. If the layers of these two groups overlap with each other, only the one on the top will be visible. Make sure to spread the clips of these groups on the timeline, avoiding big overlaps. It's not an issue if these effects overlap for just a few frames. The animation will jump from one effect to the other, often making it look like another glitch effect. An exception are the top 3 layers of the glitches group, lines 1, 2, and 3. This set of layers are in normal blending mode but have transparency and can be overlapped with all the other effects. The layers in the other groups instead are all in different blending modes and have some transparency. When these layers overlap with each other or the layers of base effects and glitches, they will blend and create a combined effect. Try changing the position of all the effects randomly, leaving just the group post effects for later. This step already offers a lot of potential of customization. By matching, synchronizing, and overlapping different types of effects, it is possible to create a great amount of alternative animations. The next thing is blending the effects. The blending mode and opacity of all the layers and groups generated by the action can be modified to decide how they combine with each other. Also, the effects of base effects and glitches here at the bottom can be mixed together by changing these two parameters. If the blending mode and opacity of a clip is grayed out, like this in the Layers panel, it is because the cursor of the timeline has to be positioned where the clip is. The same rule also applies to other types of editing tools, for example like transforms. You can also double-click the layer and change the two parameters blending mode and opacity from the Layer Styles panel. With this plugin, there isn't a best combination of blending modes to suggest. The best thing is to try them all. It really depends on the image you're using and the result you want to achieve. The next editing method is to move the effects vertically in the timeline or in the Layers panel. You can move individual layers or entire groups up and down in the Layers panel to achieve different effects. For example, the colors of the effects in the yellow group are affected by the effects in the orange group. Chromatic effects is all about color shift and color changes. You can manually position the yellow group above the orange one so that its colors won't be affected. Similar operations can be done all over the layers tree to achieve different results. The next thing is duplication and transform. In the Layers panel, you can duplicate layers as many times needed and distribute the copies in the timeline to repeat that effect multiple times in the animation. Use the command duplicate layer by right-clicking on the layer, duplicate layer. This will create the layer on the exact frame where the original layer is. Instead, the default command layer copy will create the new layer where the cursor of the timeline is positioned. Next, you can move, scale, and rotate layers with the Transform tool. To use it, select a layer and press Ctrl-T for Windows or Command-T for Mac. The next editing method is the use of the mask channels. It is possible to hide just some parts of an effect using the mask channels. Select a layer and click Add Layer Mask at the bottom of the Layers panel to create a mask channel for the layer. With the mask channel selected, select the brush tool and select also a black color. Next, paint over the image and the parts you want to hide. Painting the mask channel with black will hide parts of the layer. You can switch to white color to restore again these hidden parts. The next thing is that you can quickly change the color of some of the effects. As mentioned earlier, if a layer has an effect symbol like this, it means that it has a color overlay layer style. This can be turned on or off by clicking this eye icon and double-click to choose a custom color. Some other effects are made with solid color layers, and here you can double-click the thumbnail of these layers to change the color. Once the editing of the effects is done, you can make the final tweaks in the Post Effects group. This is very easy to use, and the few methods mentioned previously can be applied also here. For tint, grain, vignetting, scanlines, and glow, it is particularly important to tune the opacity and blending mode to make them work with your image and style. Double-click the thumbnail of tint and vignetting to change their color. And to make the glow more or less soft, you can edit its Gaussian Blur Smart Filter. The top three layers, hue, saturation levels, and contrast, are simple adjustment layers for color balancing. And now let's see how to export this animation as GIF or video. You can save it as GIF from File, Save As, and then selecting GIF as format here in this panel. I personally prefer the Save for Web panel, which is located in File, Export, Save for Web Legacy. These settings will give a good balance between quality and file size and a starting point to make your adjustments. Then, to save a video, go to File, Export, Render Video. Then select the folder where you want to save the video. The Render Video panel can be accessed also by clicking the menu icon of the timeline. As format and presets, try these two. And that's all for this video tutorial. Make sure you check out also the last section of the PDF guide, additional information, because it contains more details on how to use this plugin and what can be done with it. Thank you for watching.